Welcome everybody to the Bangers and Classics podcast, which is back for yet another round of fun and games with me, James Ruppert, and him, David Malloy. And what's David been up to?
Oh God, not been feeling too clever, so not been up to terribly much. I feel a lot better today though, thankfully. So not been up to a great deal. One or two car spots to report though,
Oh, good.
of interest. Yeah, I would describe it as ice blue. It wasn't aquamarine blue, but I saw an ice blue Esprit S3. Very nice condition one the other day. Normally aspirated version, wasn't the turbo. Also saw a Daihatsu Copan. Now, they're very thin in the ground.
Mm.
To the best of my knowledge, I saw one within a few minutes of seeing the Lotus. So perhaps it was something I wasn't aware of. And I have seen not one, but two VW campers, both in excellent condition, but both from different eras. The more remarkable one, I suppose, was a T2 with a split screen, which looked as if it just rolled off the production line, except it was better than that. So that was a very welcome sight too. I've
Yeah.
probably seen some other stuff and I've just forgotten about it. So, as per usual, what have you seen?
Well, actually, I've been out at events, not actually car events, but I've been out to some musical events over the last few weeks. And I've sort of forgotten a couple that I saw the other week. I saw a Rover, and this was obviously in the car park, a Rover 2000 TC. And yeah, you don't see many of those. And that was a
No.
brown one. So yeah, that was a proper old sort of saloon car from back in the day. Again, a car. It's a classic car, which is a popular one, but you just do not see them at all.
Yeah.
And very nearby to that was an SL Mercedes, which is always very very good to see. And then there was a bunch of Porsche spots or whatever, however you want to pronounce it. And the first one was a 924, which was in extremely good condition. And that was being used, that was being driven in a field, being parked up before going enjoying a concert. And also proper 80s stuff, a Carrera. Porsche 911 from the late 1980s, but in Targa format, and that was nice to see as well. You don't see many of those. I quite like the idea of a Targa. You punt out the roof and enjoy the weather, and can quickly put it back in when it starts to rain, as it always does.
Yeah.
So yeah, I quite like seeing some of those at events. They were cars being used. People were using them to go and do things. They weren't just parking them in a field to win a concours prize. They were driving it to an event, and they would be driving it home, and they were doing it because they enjoy owning and driving it, and that was always good.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
A lot of people who do these events trailer their cars there, though. I can
They
understand it
do.
perhaps if it. Well, they do, don't they?
They
Uh,
do. They do.
they do. It's quite sad, but I suppose when from their perspective, they've worked for X number of hours getting the car to better than new standard. They then don't spoil it by using it.
No, that's right.
Seems a bit silly, but
It's very, very sad. But I think most of the genuine people, I mean, certainly all the proper don't forget your toothbrush people I've met over the years, they do believe in cleaning their car and then driving it there. Because I think there is quite a culture that you will be shopped, you will be found out by your fellow toothbrush users
indeed.
that you haven't played the game. And actually, yeah, even though they have to spend so many hours sort of re-cleaning their vehicle once they get there. But yeah, that's all part of the fun, isn't it? Driving there.
They don't have to wash it, of course, before they go to an event. They could take a jet wash, like I've got a battery powered jet wash, bucket of water, pour some water in it, preferably warm water if you can get it, and it makes a great job. I've been using it in the Bangers and Classic CV, and
Mm,
I had to pay for it myself, of course. So I don't get
yeah,
any freebies. I don't get any payment for saying this, but it's a Black & Decker portable jet wash, and it's a great bit of kit. I have to say, I've had a few different types of battery-powered jet wash over the years, and this is by far the best so far.
mm,
Um, I've got a mains jet wash, but sometimes it's just too much hassle to rig it up, and sometimes
yeah,
you can't really rig it up where you're working. So having the portable one is a great thing, and it's not powerful enough that it's going to damage your seals in your car, but it's powerful enough to shift the dirt, which is the main thing. So I would definitely think about getting one of those. Moving on from that, we've now got E10 fuel, haven't we?
Yeah, it's very exciting, isn't it, David? And
You're easily excited. That's all I'm saying,
I'm
boy.
very easily excited. And the thing is, David, before I mean September the 1st was meant to be the sort of D Day or the E Day for E10 petrol. But garages have actually been putting the stickers on their pumps before then, sort of creating a certain amount of confusion. And obviously, I'm a very confused old man these days. So I saw the E10 sticker on the petrol, and so I think, oh well, I'll just have to shell out for the super unleaded. So I did so, and then got into conversation when I went to pay, and they said, "Oh no, we just put the stickers on because we were told to." So
Yeah.
actually, the petrol in it was still E5. This is very important to me, David, because obviously just about all the cars I have run on the old stuff, and
Mm.
so it is very important.
Mm.
Um, and so, yeah, I have been in negotiation with Shell about this. Other petrol stations are available, but they have actually agreed to send me a voucher. Strangely enough, when I said how displeased I was with the whole event. But you see, the other day I also went into a BP. Now I didn't buy any petrol, but I have to go into this BP station for other reasons every day, and I went into conversation with them about the old E5 E10, and they had no clue whatsoever. It was that they just sort of said, "Yeah, I suppose it must be E10 now because we've had." They had no clue whatsoever. So if somebody wanted to ask them what was actually coming out of the delivery system, they really wouldn't know, and you would think that's one of the few things they would need to know in a petrol station. But there you go.
No, I mean, I was in Sainsbury's the other day, and other supermarkets, as you say, are available, but this is
Mm,
where I went to get some fuel, and it was diesel I was putting in anyway, the fuel of the devil. But I
mm,
couldn't help but notice the petrol pump was labelled E10. And again, this was before the
yeah.
1st of September, but there was a sign saying it changes over on the 1st until then it's E5. I thought, it's not quite as simple as that guy is just changing the notice. I didn't investigate it to see if it was actually E5 or E10 they were dispensing, because it is very important, as you say, for
Mm,
users of older vehicles.
yeah.
Um, and I have to say, I don't see the point of E10. Being blunt
No, it
about it,
is
I just
no.
don't see the point.
It is. I think we may have mentioned before. It is just an environmental show off. It's just saying, look, we're doing our bit, and it doesn't make any difference. It just means you will use more fuel at the end of the day, and it's
Hmm.
a completely pointless virtue signal in your
Well, it
fuel
is.
tank.
It's less efficient than
Mm, yeah,
E5,
yeah.
which is crazy.
Mm,
It means nothing. Of course, you've got our chums in China and India, etc., building power stations by the minute. And in fact, since we started this podcast a few minutes ago, I'm
mm,
quite sure another one's been built and started
yeah,
to run.
of course.
And these are fossil fuel power stations, incidentally. They're
Mm.
not nuclear, though that's got its own problems. So, yeah, there you go. But hey, we brought out E10 fuel. Aren't we clever? Whoa. And on that note, I think we'll take a quick break. This is Bangers and Classics, the 24th most popular podcast in Acacia Avenue. We are now back from our break, and remarkably enough, James has decided to stay.
All
There was
right.
some doubt earlier, but I think he's desperate to do this week's banger,
Am I?
aren't you, James?
I don't know. Am I? I'm not at all
Oh, I
sure,
don't know. Well,
David.
I've often thought of you
Yeah,
as being the ideal owner of one of these, and it's not a Unimog,
really.
it's a Chrysler PT Cruiser.
Mm.
Well, get your threads on, get your guitars in the back. You're just going to look the part, baby, really.
Yeah,
What
I
do you
don't
think of
know.
them?
Well, I think you've probably misjudged me a tiny bit there, David. Um,
No, I just know
really.
you better than you know yourself, that's all.
Yeah, probably. I mean, at these times, this is when I turn to Ruppert's Bangerpedia to see what I thought about it when I wrote that tome. And yeah, and I called it a Bugsy Malone 5-seater. And yeah, that is pretty. It's a sort of a retro, sort of gangsterish looking vehicle. Whereas underneath, I mean, it is basically a Chrysler Neon, isn't it? A
No, it
very,
isn't. No,
I
apparently
thought it
not.
was. Well, I thought
No.
it was mainly a Chrysler Neon
I
underneath.
think
But
it's got some parts, but I think it's got a bespoke chassis.
oh right.
There was it was suggested by someone that was a neon,
Mm,
but I don't think it actually is. I think it's got a different rear end in terms of suspension to the neon.
mm,
Don't know.
Well, I'm sure it's got enough of a neon to make it even more dreary. I know it's got a Mercedes 2.2 diesel though, hasn't it?
It has indeed, yeah,
Yeah.
common rail diesel. But yeah, that wasn't really its saving grace, was it? If it had
No,
any, would you have bought one?
no.
No. See,
No, I don't think I would have done. But I
mm,
mean, maybe I might have bought the cabriolet version, but no, certainly not standard one, which sort of counted as an MPV, didn't it? It was sort of sold as well in that although you could only get 5 people in it, it was spacious. I think there was 64 cubic feet apparently. If you took the parcel shelf or you played with the parcel shelf a bit, but really it's just a daft looking car really, and although in some ways it at least it didn't look like anything else and it could have looked boring, but I think it just marked you out as a silly person really.
I don't know. I could definitely see you in one of those.
Mm.
Probably an open. I'll give you that much. Probably a convertible. But shedding your
Uh,
usual Savile Row suit and going for a more American style with your guitars in the back. Yeah,
mm,
it's definitely you, ZZ Top Man. It's got
yeah,
to
I
be.
don't know about
With or without the side stripe. I mean, I'll even let you go with that one if you want.
that.
But yeah, it's the Cruiser. Well, whatever it was spacious. We've got to give it that much.
Mm,
Wasn't very practical. I mean, I
no.
believe the battery was fitted underneath one of the front seats.
All right.
Because they were trying to shoehorn engines into it,
Mm,
and it's got a fairly narrow front end. But I mean, you could say the Fiat Multipla is a different way of doing the same thing, I suppose, or even the Honda FRZ.
yeah,
They've got more seats. Obviously, they've got an
more
extra seat
seats,
over the
yes.
Cruiser, but it's quite a space efficient car.
Mm.
Uh, it's a Marmite car. You either love it or you hate it. And yeah, having said that, I'm somewhere in the middle. I don't know what to make of it. I really don't. Good power plants. I mean, reasonably reliable. They say spares are quite expensive, but I don't think that's necessarily the case. If you shop around, if you go to the likes of Rock Auto, etc., you can probably pick up parts for it for a lot cheaper than you'll get at your local Jeep dealer or whatever. Because obviously Chrysler doesn't have a formal presence here at the moment. I don't think. Um, but is it a banger or a classic? It's a difficult one. I really don't know, James.
Well, I don't think
Um,
it's difficult at all, David. It's just a banger. It's just a silly cheap car that you can buy if which you would buy on price. You wouldn't buy on style, really.
but you might like the
Maybe.
style. That's the
Well,
question.
some people may well
Yeah.
do that, but
Mm,
I wouldn't be with them on that.
yeah. See, I don't know. It's different enough from most cars. I don't think it's an attractive car, but I understand why people would find it attractive. So I'm kind of swithering between the two.
Mm.
So I'm going to leave that just now and come back to it later in the podcast when I make my mind up because I genuinely don't know. You're obviously very much banger.
Oh,
I'm
it's very
tempted.
much a banger. Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely,
yeah. I
David.
mean,
Yeah.
it is.
Mm.
It can be a banger, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But is it a classic? No, I'll tell you what. I'm going to go classic on it, just for the heck of it,
All
because it,
right.
it, it dared to do something different, at least in terms of style. It wasn't a great drive, but it was, a fairly smart, clever, savvy car when it came to space efficiency. Albeit it does have its problems, like eating front wishbones, for example. But
Mm.
if you've owned an Alfa Romeo, well, you're going to be used to that anyway. And some of them are classics, so yeah, I'm going to go classic on it. So there we go. We're going to have to disagree on that one, just for a change.
Right.
But
Well, I look forward to you giving me a lift in one, David. I'll look forward to that.
it's not that big a classic, James.
Yeah, well, no.
No, 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 no. I definitely think you should get one. And I mean, contributions have not yet flowed in for the Unimog that I was hoping listeners would buy you. But maybe they'll buy you a PT Cruiser Cabriolet
I know.
instead.
Well, I do hope not.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, I think that'd be worth it, listeners. What do you reckon? Get James in a PT Cruiser Cabriolet with his guitars, and we'll get him a decent set of threads as well. Yeah, I'm going for that. So there we go. We'll move on from that one because we're not going to agree on it. Next thing we had was a challenge, wasn't it?
Did we? Did we have a challenge? Oh my days!
Oh yeah,
Uh,
indeed, yeah. We haven't prepared for this, have you?
um, well, I did, but I've done it in a fairly, uh, I don't know, in a way that hopefully will put people off because I'm terribly worried that the amount of influence that the Bangers and Classic podcast has these days, which I believe is quite considerable. Someone
Oh,
could
if only,
actually
if only.
somebody could go out and buy a very cheap V8 car and live to regret it, and maybe come back and haunt us about it. So I thought, well, if I sort of issue a warning with the one that I found, because I found it quite amusing on many levels, and also it
Right.
was near to you. Well, near to you, but it was in Kilmarnock, which
That's only about 12 miles away.
there you go. So you could pop down and buy this. Never
Yeah,
mind
that's
about.
where my dad's from originally, Kilmarnock.
Well, there you go.
Yeah,
Um,
I avoid it like the plague normally. Sorry, people from Kilmarnock, but I do. I'm an air guy, It's it's not the worst place on the planet, but
yeah.
it's somewhere I don't go a lot to, if I'm honest. Getting
Mm.
parked, etc., is not a lot of fun. And used to go to the court there quite a bit.
All right.
Yes, yes. Used to be a regular at Kilmarnock Sheriff Court. Pleading I hasten to add, usually for my own skin, but never
Mm.
mind. Anyway, you were telling us about this V8 car. What have you
Well,
found?
what it is, David, is only £2,300, which is, saves us 200 quid. Well, and with this, you would need that £200 that you're going to save. It's actually a Mercedes CL 500 from
Oh,
2002, which you really wouldn't want, I don't think, in any way, shape, or form. Obviously, this is a Category S one, so it has issues. Quite why it was written off wasn't explained in the advert. But the advert was quite entertaining to look at because all the pictures had been filed upside down. So this person
that's an Australian spec model, that's why.
they had actually already put it on its roof via the pictures. So I just thought, well, maybe the main picture is upside down. No, all of the pictures are upside down. So they've obviously uploaded them. But I don't know whether this was meant to be some subtle warning. And obviously with these, you would think, yeah, I'll just look at the pictures and I'll just buy it, um, just on the basis of that. But no, you do have to read what it says in the fine print, and they have spent a bit of money recently. But it is in limp mode, but it does start first time. I don't know whether that's a deal breaker or not for most of us, but it should serve as a warning from the classifieds. But it looked quite smart because the CL 500s do. But you could just imagine that's a world of pain and possibly a divorce and all sorts of terrible things I think would befall you. But I just thought, as it was near to you, David, you might want to pop along and have a look and maybe buy it.
Can I take a rain check on that one?
Yeah,
You'll have to, yeah. And since it's Kilmarnock, it's going to be raining sooner or
is
later
it?
anyway.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's known for its precipitation. Well, I found one too, but it's a
Yeah.
bit cheaper than that.
Oh, right,
And I don't think it actually is a Category N or S. It's
right.
a Cadillac Seville STS
Mm,
4.6 petrol,
yes,
304 bhp, which has got, I believe, 3 months MOT left. It's
good.
an automatic. It's got the
Mm.
North Star V8 engine, air suspension, front and rear heated seats, memory seats, alloys with reputedly good tyres, Bose surround system, parking sensors, 2 keys, not just the one, but 2, and its original manuals. And you get this for £1,700. That's a
All
chap
right.
called. Yes, that's not bad
Mm.
value. If you live somewhere near Luton, for some reason, however, the the front number plate is in the screen and has been detached. I don't know why that is, but it doesn't matter. I mean, it can easily be restored to its rightful position. It's sold from Luton by a guy called John.
Mm.
So if you're listening, John, we're talking about your car, and it actually looks quite presentable in the photographs. It's 20 years old. It's got a nice rumbly V8 engine. The last test was November 2020, and it's mostly brake pipes corroded and coil springs corroded, so nothing really too significant there. That's the car.
Yeah.
It's a Cadillac Seville. It's a Yank tank. Nice big V8 engine. Looks presentable. It's cheap. It's got an MOT. What more do you want for your money? What do you reckon?
Yeah, that's okay. I don't mind those. Those are
Well,
those are pretty good, and the engines are pretty good in those. Actually,
mm,
they do
yeah.
go on for quite some time.
But you're a lot closer to Luton than I am. I mean, I could ask my uncle to go and see it, but
Yeah,
there's no point really. He just wouldn't be interested. I think you should go and possibly buy
really.
that.
Well,
Yeah,
it's going
yeah,
to take me 2 hours, David. I've got 2 hours to
yeah, yeah.
drive to
You
Luton,
could...
Luton Airport.
Luton Airport, yeah, the rain
Airport.
chase, yeah. Yeah, so, oh, well, fair enough then. Well, if any of the listeners are interested, that's what to head for. It's on Gumtree, so you can check it out there. get more of the details, do the MOT check, etc. And we shall now take another quick break at the end of this section. You're listening to the Bangers and Classics podcast with Lord Sir James Rupert, KB, OBE, CBE, UFO, MFI, and some other fella. Well, we're back again. James is going to have to dash off. He's heading down to Luton to pick up a car, he says.
Is that right?
That's all about. I am not going to come out to pick up a car, just for the avoidance of doubt. So if you fancy that upside down Mercedes, then please go ahead. However, we are now going to move on to another topic of discussion, and that's a bit painful, possibly. It's the biggest repair bill that we've ever had, and I think Mr. Muppet should tell us what his is.
Really? Well, actually, my biggest repair bill, it was only last year, and that was for Mrs. Bangonomics' Porsche Cayenne. Because obviously everything to do with the Porsche is expensive. But in a way, it wasn't a repair. It was really what the engineers at Porsche should have put right the first time when they actually built and commissioned the model. As we know, it's a four-door high-rise 928 effectively. But what the very clever thing they did was a lot of the pipe work for the waterways was in plastic. That makes sense, doesn't it? We just had plenty. Yeah, don't use aluminium or anything useful like that, which conducts heat and doesn't leak very effectively. So so there was a leak. Could have left it a lot. Could have just put some Radweld on it and then just sold it. Off. Maybe that's probably the cleverest thing that we should have done, but we're not made like that. Mrs. Bangonomics likes the car anyway, so that was one reason for keeping it. So there was a leak, and it got a bit worse. And as I say, we could have left it. We could have lived with it and just topped up with coolant every other day. But it did get to the point where we had to look into it a bit more. And I saw this fantastic video with some Russians doing this job, because obviously this is apparently quite a common thing. So if you've got a V8 engine, strange we were talking about V8s, but this was also a V8, that you can actually replace all of the pipework at the top of the engine. So there was this video, and these Russians are clearly mad, but it was very entertaining to watch, and it took half an hour. Well, it took half an hour in YouTube time to watch them do it. And I did look at it, and I did think, well, it's not fantastically difficult, because the main part is actually taking all the gubbins off. You've got to dig in a bit in order to get to the pipe work, and that seemed to be the major problem. But then I just thought, nah, I'll do it. I'll get halfway through it and then leave it, or something will go wrong. So no. And also, it belongs to Mrs. Bangonomics, and if she's off the road for more than a few days, it's going to cause me problems. So I spoke to my local garage, who are sort of quite enthusiastic. I actually bought all the stuff you needed. There was a company in France actually who supplied it all. So that gubbins was about 600 quid. So that was the start of it, and they agreed to do it. At the end of it, Rob, the mechanic, said he was glad he did it, because he now knows if anyone ever asks him to do that job, he would shoot them or run away. It was one of the worst jobs he's ever had to do, because obviously taking all the pipe work away was very, very difficult to do. The whole bill came to, it wasn't outrageous, it wasn't one of those where all of a sudden it jumped to like 10 grand or something. So it rounded out at £1,000 English, David. And for someone like me, who's actually, most of the cars I've ever bought have been about £1,000, it did cause me to have a few second thoughts. But actually, it turned out okay. The car's run extremely well ever since. We piled on quite a lot of miles onto it, and actually, it was worth doing, because it's quite a decent vehicle anyway. It wasn't in itself. It wasn't very expensive when I bought it. So yeah, £1,000, a grand. That's the biggest bill I've had, and I did rack my brains, but yeah, everything else has been quite cheap by comparison. But yeah, £1,000 to keep a Porsche running, I think, is okay. You may disagree.
That's cheap. That's I can do a lot better than that.
Oh, really?
Oh God, yeah. I'm going back to the late 90s, and I was moving left my job to work in Glasgow. I was living up in Caithness, which is far north of Scotland, and I was coming down the A9 as it was, stuck behind a tractor, and I pulled out to overtake it, and my throttle pedal got jammed. It's like an organ type throttle, and it jammed to the floor. Really had to think very quickly, and I did buzz the engine a bit. But so I got past the tractor, found out what was wrong with the throttle, sorted it, but I'd buzzed the engine. But anyway, drove back down, and then I hear this bump, bump, bump. What the heck is that? And I decided it was going to have one of those days, the car. One of the drive shafts, the gator had split. I think a stone had something had pierced it. It was a traumatic damage rather than a build up over time. And it was spewing grease everywhere. So that was great. I took it to nearest Halfords on the road. It was the only garage that was open. It was a Sunday, I think. And they wouldn't do anything. I think they gave me some grease and I could repack it. And I had to drive home seeking every paddle I could to cool down that axle. So it sat in the garage a while after that. I had it trailered down to a specialist. This was a Matra Murena. It was a normal car really, but because that was the 1.6 version with the Talbot Solara 1592 engine, but unique drive shafts, etc. So I sent it down to Newcastle and got a few jobs done to it. And the bill, this is 1997, came to £2,300 plus the cost of sending it down to them. It was quite substantial. I can't remember everything that was done to it now, but I know the valves were taken out and lapped back in. Obviously had a new drive shaft, and sundry other things had cropped up because I'd not been using it for a little while between times. So yeah, that was quite a nasty surprise, I have to say, back in the day. And it was literally just ready before I went to France to a Matra thing at their test track, as was a place called Morfontaine. And I drove it there and back. There was slight noise from the suspension, which we just hadn't tightened up properly, I think, but nothing drastic. And it was good thereafter. But it was a very unwelcome bill, particularly the best part of 25 years ago.
Yeah, but you were keeping a classic car alive, really. I mean, it's a very unusual car to see. I don't think I've ever seen one on the road. I really don't ever.
Yeah,
I think that was cheap, cheap at the price for
cheap at the price.
preserving motoring heritage. You're
Yes.
basically a hero, David.
Well, I sold it a couple of years later and didn't make much more than that. I got
Oh, really?
just over £3,000 for it. Yeah.
All right.
And then prices really went downhill because I sold
Yeah.
a couple of other ones I'd bought in the meantime, a couple of S's, which were really rare ones. And I don't think I got 3,000 for either of them. One of them had a brand new cam chain on it as well. Yeah, but there you go. You live and learn. Great cars when they were
Yeah.
working properly. Absolutely great fun to drive, and particularly the red one, the red S stuck to the road like glue. The one that gave me all the trouble back in 96, 97 was one I owned twice and nearly bought it for a third time, but we're not going to go into that today, I don't think. But instead, what we are going to go into is our new Bangers and Classic TV cop show. And we're going
All
to do,
right.
yeah. And have you decided, James, do you want it to be set in America or do you want it to be set in good old Blighty?
Well, I don't know. I'd rather do it over here. I think I completely misunderstood the way you were setting this up. But I mean, are we like Starsky and Hutch then? Is that basically what it is?
No, we can be whatever we want to be.
Really?
It's completely open ended, as
Yeah.
is most things bangers and classics. We don't have a script. We don't have any working ideas. We just
Yeah.
do whatever we think. No, I mean, for my part, I mean, if I were to be a fictional detective, and frankly, I should be because
Mm,
I'm not good at anything else.
yeah.
Um, I think I would want to have a Porsche 928, probably a silver one or a black one. Probably have to be the west coast of America somewhere, just for the sun and the Porsche, and just the coolness of it all, the open
Mm,
spaces. But that's what I would have, and that would be it. And I wouldn't carry a gun or anything. I just disarm them with
mm,
the force of my personality or something
yeah.
like that. I'd probably end up being shot quite a lot actually. What about you, Mr. Ruffett? What would you
Um,
drive?
well, yeah. You see, I got very confused. I thought, well, am I doing a Starsky and Hutch thing with David,
Well, you can do.
which would be very nice, obviously. But I was rather hoping I'd be with Glynis Barber, really, as a sort of Makepeace and Ruppet sort of show. That's what I was hoping to do, um, if I could be set in London. And the City of London Police actually had 5 Series, way back in the day. They had E12 and E28 ones, and those were really, really cool cars to have. So, yeah, I'd go for that. Otherwise, obviously, I'd be in Italy, and I'd be driving the Innocenti, because I think that would be quite fun to
Mm,
have as a police car.
I'm
Just the
not.
just the sight just the sight of putting a flashing blue light on the top, like they used to do especially in the American ones. I would have thought would amuse and entertain people.
Yeah, what part of Italy would you go for?
Well, I mean, I should go for the warm part, but all the parts I really like. I do like the colder northern bits. So I'm quite happy in Milan,
Right,
which is a place that I quite liked. But yeah,
right.
it'd
Go
be
for
it'd
the.
be it'd be even funnier in that I wouldn't be able to speak Italian, so I'd be solving crimes by shouting at them in English, and
Do you speak
it,
English?
that's right, yeah, and I think that would be very entertaining for half an
Yes.
hour.
Well, for me, for the first 5 minutes, yeah.
Yeah,
What does worry me though is this business with Makepeace. Do you think she'd go for a guy who had a 528 or a 535?
yeah, she would, yeah, because
I'm not sure.
she only had a cabriolet, didn't she? A Ford. I think it was an XR3, wasn't it?
I
Cab.
think it was, yeah.
Yeah, that she had, and he had, didn't he? Her future husband. He did have an SL, didn't he?
Who cares about him?
Mercedes. Yeah. So
Frankly, who cares about him?
no, that's right. But I think
Yeah.
he had, yeah, I think he had an SL Mercedes, which was quite odd, really. But in a way, it was a very odd show, but it was quite interesting and very much of its time. And
Yes.
yeah, no, we did all right. But yeah, I'm quite obsessed now, but by the fact that we should extend maybe our podcast into solving crimes. I think we could do that, David, and
We could
yeah.
do that, yeah.
Yeah, and on prime time TV as well. I'm sure
Oh,
we could.
definitely, yeah.
Yeah,
That's it. We could give us cold cases.
yeah,
We'll soon
exactly.
solve them, yeah.
Mm,
Well, arrest the first person we don't like and just charge
e-
them with it.
exactly.
That seems to work quite well.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think so. Right, let's do it. I mean, what we're waiting for. I think
yeah.
we should vanish right now and do it. In fact, that's exactly what I'm going to do. Well, after the break, anyway. You're listening to Bangers and Classics, the podcast that boldly goes where no other podcast has gone before. So we're back after that. I'm currently sort of tending some bruises after getting whacked by the missus. We're talking about Glynis Barber in such glowing terms.
Mm,
Off air, of course, but
yeah,
not. So that's my advice to you, James: is wear a flak jacket when you do this podcast. You never know.
yeah.
So yes, we've got one more thing we were going to do, I think, and that was picking an emerging classic, something we don't really discuss, but it fits in with your Bangonomics, your most recent Bangonomics book, very nicely. I think it's pick a 2000 to 2010 car that you feel will become a classic and state your reasons why. And that really fits with the new Bangonomics book, doesn't it?
Um, it may well do,
I think it
David.
does.
Yeah, I've just got to finish it. But yes, but certainly with Rupert's Bangerpedia, that's
Oh
sort
yeah,
of bang on trend.
yeah.
Uh,
That's what I meant for
that's
Bangopedia.
it. Well,
Yes.
there are so many tomes that you have to juggle with my canon. Um,
Yeah, loose cannon, possibly.
I have a very loose canon. So, do you want me to go first, or should
I think you
we?
should
Should
go
we
first.
hear? All
Yeah, why
right.
not?
Okay. Well, in that case, then, yeah. And let's have a look in Rupert's Bangerpedia. I mean, this isn't a plug. I mean, this is always next to me. Because I find it quite useful because one of my chair legs is a bit short and I can
Ah,
stuff it under, and yeah, it keeps me on the level, which is good. Um, but I'm going to talk about this vehicle because actually one of our listeners, a chap called Matthew, who is actually a very good writer. You can find some of his writing recently in
mm,
Free Car Mag. But I know that he's sort of been gifted, and he's too polite to say no, but he was gifted a Citroen Plurial, and I know he's not at all certain quite what to do with it. So I thought if we talk it up as a future classic, somebody might come along and take it off his hands. That's my purpose today in writing about that, which ran from '94 to 2010. So it's just within our limit.
mm.
And my amusing story about that particular vehicle is that I went past a Ford garage quite a few years ago, and one was obviously being part exchanged. And as I went past, for some absurd reason, the salesman was taking the roof apart. Now, the roof on the Pluriel is made up of lots of plastic bits and bobs. I don't know if you've ever seen one or seen one
Mm.
deconstructed, but yeah, he was going to take it apart because that's what you do when you're a car salesman. You've got to make sure that everything is there. You've got to make sure that everything works. And so he idiotically was taking it apart because I watched him for about 20 minutes and then I had to go away and do stuff. And that was like 2 hours later. And I came back 2 hours later and he was still trying to put the roof back together again. It was just, he just got in such a state. It was just like ridiculous. So that's one reason for possibly not buying one. But there's part of me thinks, yeah, it is a bit like an open air 2CV, and maybe in a few years' time, people go, "Yeah, where are those plurials gone? Because they're great, aren't they? And they're very simple. It's I think it's a C3 underneath, isn't it?
It is, yeah, it's a
Yeah,
CV.
pretty much. So it's a pretty basic little car. So yeah, I think they're going to be worth maybe 10, 20, 30,000 pounds, and let's hope that helps Matthew out. Really,
I think it will.
yeah.
I remember them being built. I remember
Mm.
hearing at the time that matter had something to do with the roof.
Oh, did they?
Well, whether it was, well, it was, yeah, indeed, it was the engineering
Yeah,
design division of them,
yeah.
which I think was based at Vélizy rather than at Romorantin. But yeah, that's what I heard. Eventually became part of Pininfarina and was
Mm.
sold on from there once the company went, well, the way of all things,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But that's what I heard. I don't know if it's true or not. I mean, it
Mm.
could be a pack of lies. I mean, in the same way that they were also said to be behind a large part of the BMW Z1, which
Mm.
does make more sense
Yeah.
if you know how the Z1 was put together and who was the world leader in that kind of technology at the time. It wasn't BMW, though they've obviously some very gifted engineers. Citroen Plurial, yeah, I would have one actually. Yeah,
Yeah, they're all
yeah,
right, aren't they?
definitely. Yeah, I think they're
Mm.
okay. Yeah, they're not bad little cars.
Yeah.
I've gone for something a bit rortier now. I thought of a Ford Focus Mark One. Then I
Mm.
thought, nah, everybody's going to say that. I went for something a bit rarer, and it creeps into 2000 because you couldn't buy them until about the end of 2000. Was the Ford Racing Puma,
Mm.
and they allegedly made 500 of them. Um, they only did that by giving several away to Ford employees or as part of a company car scheme, I think. I don't think they actually gave them away, but they got them as part of a company car scheme, a management scheme. And yeah, I mean, they were all right hand drive. They were based on the Puma, but they had a engine that gave considerably more horsepower than standard and a lot of other tricks and tips and little bits and bobs. Unfortunately, the rust protection wasn't any better than the standard Puma, but since they hold the value pretty well and they're actually gaining a bit in value, I would suggest you check them out. If you're looking for a really sporty, good car to drive that's a little bit different from the norm, but isn't so far removed that you can't get spares for, I would certainly check out the Racing Puma because I think they're very good. I know Gavin Braithwaite Smith, who we mentioned last week, had one, and I think Gavin himself, if he were here, would admit that he made a mistake selling it. Yeah, I would definitely go for a Racing Puma. Very nice cars, very quick, very bespoke in terms of the style, wider wheel arches, wider tracks, slightly different interior seats. Well, the seats are different on them, and just little bit more powerful. Not ball of fire, I have to say, but a really nice car to drive, and one I think that is going to go up in value very considerably. I mean, after all, if you're selling a Capri for 50,000 quid, then these are going to be worth 25, 30 in a couple of years if they've not reached that already, James.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think they're extremely good, and yeah, they're probably undervalued slightly at the moment. But the only way is up, really, for those. As you
Mm,
say, there's some very ordinary Fords by comparison. Certainly, very ordinary to drive by comparison,
yep.
which are driven by nostalgia. But with this, it would be driven
Mhm.
by the fact that it is good fun to
Yeah.
hoon about in.
Even a standard Puma is good fun, but
Mm, yes, they are.
there's really no money in them at all.
No.
And unfortunately, they do have serious rust
Mm,
problems. It starts at the rear wheel arches, and that's usually the first sign that you've got a bit of an issue in your hands. But if you can find one that's had that work done and keep on top of it, then get it. Even if it's a standard Puma, just go out, grab
mm.
one while you still can before the world gets wise to the secret. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
And I think on that note, James, unless you've got anything you want to add, we should call it a wrap for this week. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I suppose so. Because then off air we can have some more, Glynis Barber talk.
We shall say thank you very much for listening. Hope to see you soon. And thank you, Mr. Whippet, as ever, for
Yeah,
your
well, thanks
company.
for Mr. Malloy. Yeah, for coming up with all the topics because I don't.
Oh God, yeah, James can up with the marathons. I do the topics.
Yeah.
Either way, they're nutty. That's for sure.
Yeah. Cheerio, everybody. Thanks for coming.
Indeed, cheerio. Bye.